deal. And if they move, they were originally looking at the plants right off that Outlook interchange there on the other side of Munson, which then that would be what you would have coming right into town. And I mean, that's where that Williams pipeline goes. So it's not a great solution other than the overall regional impact of trying to clean up some of these, manure.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Trying to get them out of the city core. Sorry.
Wait.
Yeah, I hear it's coming. No, I never am, but
We're due.
I have hay this weekend, so I'm really not looking forward to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it's always like, it doesn't just slowly creep up.
No,
It's like
it's
here,
sudden.
then I'll start doing.
And then we'll be there for the rest of the year until it gets cold. No, not at all. Every year, about this time, I think about how nice it would be to have a pool, and I think, oh, maybe I should plan, start financially budgeting for that.
Mhm.
But, and then I get this year, this has been like
Right,
5-year rotation.
Right.
And finally, I've just kind of thought about, there's been a lot of Facebook stuff going around where people just get a little kiddie pool and put a chair in it. Well, maybe I should
A
just do
water
that.
trough.
A water trough.
The
Yeah.
price of pool chlorine and stuff has gone up 3 times along with everything else, and I have a vinyl pool.
Oh, okay.
And it's getting so where it's like, can I afford this anymore? And each year the chemicals go up. Everybody got the small pools during the COVID. And so they're like, all right, we can make more money on the chemicals.
I have a hot tub. It doesn't help this time of year, but.
Well, I'm thinking, you know what? I'm gonna sell my pool and get a hot tub. And then I looked at the price of hot tubs last week and I just, I'm gonna stay inside with my air conditioning.
Yeah. Ours before COVID, but it's just phenomenal how fast the prices are escalating.
Mhm.
Chemicals have probably gone up in the hot tub too, huh?
Yeah, they have
Oh,
the
yeah.
same. It's
Yeah,
Ordering bromine and
yeah.
the same tablet.
Let's get ready. Counselor, I think you said, Counselor Hart.
No, she was stuck behind a train. I moved. She did.
Oh, wait.
We'll see right now, they come in, we'll on the record over here. Good morning, everyone. Thanks.
Oh, push a button.
Yes.
Show me which one. Maybe
This one.
I'll.
Yeah. Yeah. Good morning, everyone, to the Sunnyside City Council special meeting on this July 1st, 2024. For the record, everyone in council is present, for the exception of Mayor Barsma and Councillor Hart and Councillor Frosto. Councillor Hart should be on her way. We heard from Councillor Frosto.
No.
No, we'll give her a few minutes. I know the train is out there, getting everybody stuck. Mayor Barsma did ask for excuse absent. Council, do I have you here? Any objections? Hearing none, he's excused. Okay. Also, for the record, everyone that's supposed to be here from staff is present, except for its interim city manager also asked for an excuse absent.
Counselor Fausto just texted and said she'll be here in 5 minutes.
Okay, once they walk in, we'll put that on the record. So active agenda, we have two items. Let's start with the Independence Day. Approve a resolution proclaiming July 4th, 2024 as Independence Day. Madam City Clerk.
So here's a resolution on behalf of Councillor Vasquez requesting the proclamation for Independence Day in Sunnyside.
Councillor Vasquez, do you want to say a little bit about this proclamation?
Yeah, so 4th of July has been something really big in my family. We always celebrate it and we go all out. So I'm not sure if Sunnyside has ever accepted or approved a proclamation regarding Independence Day. I know it's something that all of the United States celebrates and we're all aware of, but it'd just be nice to just have something out for our community and to just send a little reminder for everyone to have a good and safe Independence Day.
Anything else from council? I don't know if we've ever approved a resolution for 4th of July, but I think it's a great idea. Also like to recognize the Lions Club for having the event every year. I'm not sure how long they've been doing it, but it definitely, if they weren't doing it, who else would, right? I mean, it's great for the community. I wish it was bigger. Maybe one day we could get it as big as Cinco de Mayo. I've been other cities before for the 4th of July and they have parades, they have, they go all out. So yeah, I definitely want to recognize, our local Lions Club for the hard work that they do every year. All right, council, do we have a motion?
Move to approve?
And I second.
I have a motion by Councillor Ripley and second by Councillor Vasquez to approve a resolution proclaiming 4th of July, 2024 as Independence Day in Sunnyside, Washington. Do you have any debate? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, motion passes. So that being said, I read it into the record, correct?
Yes.
All right. City of Sunnyside, Washington proclamation, whereas Independence Day also known as 4th of July commemorates the adoption of Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1976, which marks the birth of the United States of America as an independent nation. And whereas Independence Day symbolizes the bravery and resilience of our nation's founders who fought for independence from the British rule. Let us reflect on the values and principles upon which our nation was founded, including liberty, justice, and equality for all. And whereas fireworks displays and other community events are held to celebrate this event in Sunnyside, to celebrate our shared history and values, and to come together as a one nation. Now, therefore, I, George Galvan, as Deputy Mayor of Sunnyside, Washington, do hereby proclaim July 4th, 2024 as Independence Day, to remind us of the importance of freedoms, democracy, and unity as we celebrate with pride and look forward to a future fulfilled with continued prosperity and success as a nation. And testimony whereof I here undo my hand and cause the seal of the city of Sunnyside to be affixed, done at the city of Sunnyside this first day of July in the year 2024.
I'd like to mention that was 1776, not 1976.
Did I say 1976? Okay, I'm sorry. 1776.
Just to get it on the record.
Thank you.
We're really young
Counselor.
country.
For the record, Councilor Frosto is here.
Thank you.
All right, Council, let's go on to the next item. Receive a presentation from HLA regarding the 2025-2030 6-year transportation improvement plan, also known as TIP. Discuss the 2025 and 2030 6-year transportation plan TIP and receive recommendations from council. Since our manager is gone, Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, Council. I have Stephanie Gray here with HOA who's going to do a presentation on our 6-year transportation tip.
Members of council, deputy manager, deputy mayor, public works director, thank you for having me here today. I'm a little tongue tied, it's Monday. So again, I really do appreciate the special meeting being called. We hope to explain a little bit why that was necessary. And we were anticipating doing all of this in the July 8th meeting, so consequently, here we are. Every year, municipalities, city agencies have to adopt a 6-year transportation improvement program. It is a requirement of receiving funds. Ultimately, this is a WashDOT requirement that is imposed upon every agency to be in the running for solicitation of that state and Fed money. And so this process is actually very regimented. Every agency is required to adopt a TIP. Please excuse me in the acronym. It's a Transportation Improvement Plan, but TIP is much easier to say. So the deadline for these is July 31st. And so that's what puts us into kind of the situation that we are. But prior to that July 31st date, there's 2 items that have to happen at the council level. One is a public hearing, and then one is actual formal adoption by council. And so those 2 items are scheduled to go on July 22nd. And I think all of you have your tip sheets in front of you. So when we send this on, those dates will actually be on this document itself, and then it gets forwarded up to YVCOG, who is our local MPO, RPO, or RTPO. And from COG, any project that has significant interest or has funding associated with it already is elevated to WashDOT. So the July 31st date allows YVCOG to also do a public outreach for a regional MRTIP. And then also the state does an outreach for those items that are elevated at the state level called a STIP, which some of the projects on here will be elevated to both the regional plan and the statewide plan. So that's why July 31st is such an important date, that these other agencies will be working on everybody's regional plan, for about the next 3 to 4 months. So at our level, it is required that there is that public engagement process, which is the public hearing, and then council then adopt this formally. And to prepare for that, the city clerk has to advertise that public hearing for a certain duration. And that, because the Sunnyside Sun publishes once a week, we have to be very mindful about making sure there's enough time out there for the public to make that comment. So the public hearing is scheduled to be advertised on July 10th. So kind of backing up again, we had where we were going to have the July 8th meeting allowed us to have a discussion with council and solicit comments. Why this meeting right now is important is because when we get to that public hearing, so when we officially have this advertised, we don't really have a lot of opportunity to change any of the projects on the list without starting that process all over again. So when July 10th happens, when we have that advertisement out, these documents will be issued to the public where they can provide comment during the public hearing. But at the council level, if you guys had any major changes, we would not have time to make those changes and then do that adoption right afterward. Historically in Sunnyside, and I'm recognizing there's new council members, so this is the first time you guys have seen it. Historically, we have done the public hearing and the adoption in the same meeting without this discussion. But considering kind of the new, how this is new for everybody, at least 4, we felt that would be important for you to understand kind of this process and how we get from A to B. And it's next year, it should be a little bit easier and smoother for everybody. So this is meant to be a discussion. I would encourage you to ask any questions throughout. That way we can just tackle them. And please excuse us that, a lot of us speak in acronyms now. And so if there's anything that you don't understand, please just let me know, because sometimes it's just second nature to us. So what you have is a tip. And this looks probably very detailed. And there's probably a few acronyms on there that you may not know of, but please let me know if you want explanation. So our presentation today can be as detailed or as broad as what you want. And again, the hope is just to get you to a point where you're comfortable with this process and what we're trying to do. So the form that you see, it is a state form. We cannot change it. We are actually very limited on the information that we can put in here as it's an online database. So we're required to fill in the regulatory information and then we hit basically submit and it goes to COG, and then from COG it goes to the state. So this is the view, the format that the state and COG are used to looking at. So the purpose of this, different cities use this in different ways. The vast majority of cities here in Yakima County, this is a planning document. So the projects in here are not absolute, but they're intended to be those projects, transportation projects within the city that, I guess, target the largest amount of people, that provide the largest benefit on a citywide scale. And these are also those projects that the plan would be to apply for either state or Fed money. So when we're applying for Fed money, it's a requirement for the project to be on this form of tip. That's not to say that today or even the 22nd is the last day you see this. So projects can be added and removed at any time throughout the year. So this is kind of the, I guess, that first cut of, the rest of the year. But say we have a funding source that comes up that just wants to target projects by schools, and we don't have that on there. It's okay, because we come back to council, we do a public hearing for that particular project, and we add it into the transportation plan. Likewise, if there's a project that, after the fact, 6 months, council just didn't agree with it and wanted off, we can do that as well. There's no harm in having that level of outreach throughout the year. And yeah.
Question then. So you just mentioned that after the 22nd, there won't be any room for changes or updates. So is there or isn't?
There, yes and no. It's a great question. So right now we're looking at the 2025 to 2030 transportation plan. So that's in terms of federal years. So 2025 becomes a federal year in October of 2024. So at October 2024, we can make changes at any time throughout the year that would impact the 25 to 30 tip. So right now, if we wanted to make a change, so say we had a funding program that came in and it was a requirement to be on the 6-year tip. When we do that amending, and we can do the amending right now, it would just amend the 2024 through 2029 tip, so the current tip that you're in. So this will actually become the official tip in after October of 2025. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and that in itself is confusing. We all think in calendar years, where the state and the feds think in federal years, so.
And for the record, Councillor Hart is present.
And so I just really want to relay that we can make those changes, we can make those modifications. In fact, as we submit applications, when we submit the application, we have to do a new cost estimate. And I don't think I've ever had a tip that we haven't had to modify, because not only does the description have to be correct, the costs have to be correct, which always becomes an issue. So again, you're going to see this throughout the year, but this is just that initial outreach and planning. And the other thing on this document that we have no control over, there's a box that says priority number. That does not mean that is priority number 1 for a city. That it is just a project number. We can't change that, but project 2 has no more priority than project 1. So most cities will use this as a planning or a resource for looking at some of the major transportation projects within the city. Again, doesn't mean it's a catch-all. What we typically do not see on here are those projects that cannot be state or fed funded. I mean, that's the purpose of this, is to show that to Ivy Cog and the state that this is more of a much bigger project than maybe like a cul-de-sac, which would never receive state or fed money. So hopefully that helps. This document also ties into federal functional classified streets. I know we had some discussion about that earlier. So there's several roadways throughout the city that are considered to be federal functional classified because of their use. They're able to move people from one side of the city to the other side, or freight, or they have a traffic volume where they're significant to the city. So those are also the roadways that we try to capture with this tip. So unless there's any questions on this, I'll go ahead and talk about the projects. I think for the most part, everything is self-explanatory on here, except maybe some acronyms. So when you see phase, you see PE, that is the state's terminology for design engineering. They like to do things a little bit different than us. And then when you see CN, so CN is a phase, is construction. That's construction and construction engineering. You're going to see a couple of the others. RW stands for right of way. PL stands for planning. So those are state acronyms that we can't change. Also in here under status on any of these, you're either going to see a P or an S. P means it's a planned project, meaning that it's something we should apply for. S, you have two of those in here. S means secured, meaning that we have money coming in already for that project. So,
Do
you have,
we,
go ahead.
do we want to take a one project at a time? Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'll basically just read the project name. We'll talk a little bit about the location, why it's significant. So every project in here has some level of history. And then if, there's any questions, let's maybe talk about it by project wise. That way we don't wait till the end.
To the end of the whole presentation or the end of each one?
The end of each project.
Each one, okay. Council, if she's gonna read one by one, so if you have any questions, just let me know and I'll call upon you for each project.
And you can look at the tip sheet or you can look at the project map, which kind of everybody thinks about these a little bit differently. Some folks like looking at the analytical part of it, but for others, looking at it in a kind of more of a regional sense helps a little bit. So the first one on here is the 9th Street and Edison Avenue improvement. So this is right outside of City Hall. This has been on the list for a few years now, and this project has morphed repeatedly. So we had the Veterans Plaza that went in. At one point, the city was looking to purchase a church. There were thoughts about closing 9th off for a little bit, a stint there. So this project is intersection improvements as it relates to trying to slow people down in front of City Hall so that when you're in those diagonal parking spots, you actually have some protection and being able to back up, because it's folks are going through there pretty fast. So we have looked at a number of items for this. We've looked at a roundabout. We've looked at a traffic light. We've looked at stop signs. Sitting with city staff, the immediate need is to try some stop signs. If the city's procurement of the church continues, then a roundabout would fit there, a small roundabout. And so that's the reason why this project is on here, is that we don't need to have it to put stop signs in, but if we want to do a much more robust project that really ties into pedestrian safety to get to the Veterans Plaza and the post office and City Hall, then we'd want to look at a little bit a bigger improvement at this location. There has been some accidents here, nothing fatal, nothing serious that would trigger immediate need, but it is a safety concern. And I'm sure most folks know that, their city staff has put up some yellow signs there just to try to get people to move over. And then the number of times that sign has been hit shows us that
The curb
people really aren't
doesn't
paying
slow 'em
attention.
down.
Right. So something else is needed there. So project 2 on the list.
Oh,
Oh, go ahead.
Council, do we have
Any
any questions on this project?
Mm,
Is the project considering only a roundabout? Is there like a 4-stop, like the idea of like also, putting in there like four stop way.
Yep.
Yeah, cause that curb out there is like really far out.
So we actually designed that, and the curb being where it's at actually gives you a 15-foot lane line, which is actually really large. The issue with that intersection is, as I guess as you're going to Yakima Valley Highway, when you look at the lanes, there is not channelization in front of the church or the school to kind of push people over. So then when they're coming through that intersection and they're going too fast, they see that curb, which pushes them over to the center line where they should be anyway.
Mhm.
So at the staff level, we're looking at doing that four-way stop sign
Mhm.
and to try to see how that will function at that location to kind of slow people down. The next stop sign then is at Sixth.
Mhm.
And so you're not, the fortunate thing is you don't have stop signs after stop signs, which is kind of a little redundant. So, at this location, we'd be doing that stop sign. We really, for a four-way stop, per sign, we're looking at about $500. So, a very cheap solution. However, if we needed to do like, say, pedestrian improvement, if we needed to update ADA ramps or do sidewalk or any of those level of extensions, that's when this project would come in. So as an interim approach, we can do the four-way stop. If we want to look, if that doesn't work, or if we have issues with pedestrians and getting them to that Veterans Plaza, then we need to look at something a little bit bigger than just doing a four-way stop. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So,
makes
Go
sense.
ahead, Counselor Hart.
so one of the things that you're suggesting also is the possibility of a roundabout there. And again, that's a known traffic slower downer. Can't think of the right word there. But it does help to reduce the speed of traffic.
Yep.
And
It does.
probably helps with pedestrian as well, doesn't it?
It does. So roundabouts are proven very well to work. The issue with roundabouts is that you have to have the real estate. It has to be big enough to not cause issues with that turning movement. I mean, we don't want to preclude, the box trucks and folks from coming through. So that turning radius needs to be big enough to accommodate that type of vehicle. We did do some concept plans at this location, and with the right of way, we would need to procure right of way. So with the Veterans Plaza where it is, of course, we want to leave that where it is. We don't want to impact them. So what happens is then that roundabout gets pushed north, where some property from City Hall and then also some property from that church would be needed to be able to actually build that roundabout. So in the intermediate, going to that stop sign, we don't need property for that. I would hate for us to look at a signal right away just because of the cost of those. They've been running right now $500,000 to $750,000 just for a signal. And so if we need to elevate this project to a more robust, permanent metric, we really want to really consider that roundabout. But if we can't get the property, then we have to go back to the signal. But in the interim phase, that four-way stop will accomplish everything that we're looking to do right now.
Have we considered speed bumps the way the hospital has on that road there?
Yeah, so those speed bumps that were put in by the hospital,
So
it that was quite a long discussion before council came on board or new council came on board. And what that was intended to only be temporary, and what the hospital put in was not at the direction of city staff. The issue that we have with speed bumps and speed humps is maintenance and in the winter snowplows and also storm drainage. So really speed bumps and speed humps, they work really, really good if, they're extended the full length of or width of the roadway. Otherwise you got folks who are crafty and, they just kind of maneuver around them. But what happens when you extend that all the way through is you lose continuity on your drainage. So it's kind of a two-part deal. You can either do the temporary ones that the hospital done and all that they are kind of the rubber mats and that they stick them down. They're out there once a week, putting them back in because someone will just wipe them out. Or we look more into that speed hump and a speed bump type solution, understanding that Public Works is gonna have a very difficult time maintaining them. But it's not as simple as just putting a mound of asphalt down because you have to look at all of those other features and making sure that you're not gonna create a bigger problem from them. So yes, that's a really good thought and conversation, and I think it's one that we'd want to continue. The city does, just to inform council, the city does have a traffic calming policy. And so for citizens who want to talk about speed in front of their neighborhoods, there's a policy that they and there's actually a handbook that they need to provide an official complaint to Public Works. And then that will the next step is for Public Works and to put feedback signs. And so this is all a kind of recorded and documented process. And what we try to do is prevent neighborhoods from only having one person complain and the rest of the neighborhood says, well, we don't have a problem. And so we just don't want to put a permanent feature out if there really isn't a problem. So we would want to follow that procedure too.
Gotcha.
Mm.
No more questions on item 1. We can move on to the next one.
Number 2. So this stretch of road, one of the things that we try to do, and you'll see a couple of projects like this, is try to target then those areas coming in and out of the city, knowing that they would have the highest volume of traffic. So this project truly falls under preservation, and so this is a grind and overlay. So throughout the year, we monitor the road conditions along with Public Works. Public Works does a good job of doing kind of that crack sealing and getting the chip seals done. But those only generally last every year or about every 3 to 5 years. So at some point, the roadway will deteriorate to the point that we need to resurface it, like what we've been doing with Yakima Valley Highway. So project number 2 is that next step. So with this particular project, the sidewalks are generally all there. We are missing some ADA ramps. And then the roadway surface is kind of cracking to the point where it's going to fall beyond the ability of Public Works to maintain it. So this is truly just taking that asphalt off and putting it back on.
Any questions, council, on this item?
Not on this one, no.
Well, it seems like we've talked about the 16th Street quite a bit earlier this year when we were talking about the ADA. So we're probably pretty familiar with this one. At least I feel like I am, so.
I myself like this one. You have a lot of traffic for the kids going out there to the schools. And we definitely need that ADA, for the kids and for the public.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, how long will it stretch out from the 16th? Like, how long does the 16th go from end to end?
So 16th actually spans all the way across the city limits, but the part that we're looking at would be the worst part of asphalt pavement, and it's from Yakima Valley Highway north to about the city limit line, which is at Sierra Middle School.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, Jacqueline. I didn't have it pulled up right in front of me. Thank you.
No problem.
If no more questions on this one, we'll move on to the next.
So project 3 is a lot like project 2 in that we're trying to rehab the roadway. However, project 3 in Schoon Road. So this is going from Yakima Valley Highway up to the city limit. There's a little bit more going on with this road. We've had a couple of incoming developments that have constructed curb gutter sidewalk, but we also have quite a bit missing still. And so where preservation will take care of an existing roadway, reconstruction, if we have those missing sidewalk gaps, we have to call it a reconstruction project instead of a preservation project. So in this case, that is the case. We have sidewalk gaps, we have missing ADA. We need to do a little bit of widening in some areas that are undeveloped to make that a full roadway width. So that's why this one is on the list, is that it is a reconstruction project, and it's also one of the main ways into the city from north to south. There's a number of lots throughout there that will continue to develop, similar to Mountain States and Oxark. And we're just trying to clean up then that little corridor. We also have that the geometry looks a little interesting below the three. You see that little swoop? That's the Yellowstone Trail. Right now it has a bunch of ecology blocks across it. So this project would try to clean up then that entire corridor.
Council, any questions for this item?
Deputy Mayor, the one that's the purple dot, is that where the roundabout goes?
Yep, we'll be talking about that here in
In another minute or two, okay. I just wanted to, the whole picture there for me was, just need the visual, thank you.
We'll move on to the next item.
Okay, the next one, number 4. So it's not shown on your map. However, this is gonna be a project that's gonna be staying on your tip for a long time. Citywide ADA ramps. And so it's fairly vague. This is to account for, so earlier this year, we wrapped up on a self-evaluation of the city's ADA compliance with those features within the right-of-way. Right now, we have close to 1,100 ramps throughout the city that are non-ADA compliant or missing. And that combined with sidewalk gaps, that magnitude of cost is close to 15 million. And so what we're finding is that every year there's programs out there for ADA accessibility and ramps. In fact, you guys received an award from TIB. And so those funding programs like to target between the $500 to $1 million range. So this project is trying to target then that when you see the CN, I know the numbers are greater than $1 million, but when you kind of back it out, it is $1 million construction project. And so by not, I guess, identifying the exact location, what allows us to do is be pretty flexible in working off then your self-evaluation plan to target then those ADA ramps. So generally what the guidelines is work around your schools and your high volume areas, and then continue to work out to all your neighborhoods until all the ADA compliance needs are met.
Gotcha. Council, any questions on this item? Let's move to the next.
I think that'll be the easiest one all day. So the next one on here is South 6th Street improvements. I'm looking for it on my map. Oh, sorry, number 5, South 6th Street improvements. So around 2011, 2012, the city, and I think there's a few city council members here that might remember that, we went through a really robust steering committee about downtown revitalization and downtown improvements. And there was a resolution sought by council back in 2011, 2012 about the extent of the downtown improvements and phasing that out between phases 1 and 2. The city's been focusing on that phase 1, which is concentrated around 6th Street, and then going north up to YVH. So this project number 5 is then that phase 2 of that downtown revitalization as it continues to happen. These are big projects. So these are going to be federally funded. And on these guys, we have to wait for those sources to come up to be able to fund this size of project. So in the downtown core, the plan from council was to do safety improvements, to do those curb extensions, to add street trees and lighting and brick pavers, whether we continue that in this project or we just focus it to the downtown area. That's what project number 5 is. So it's just a continuation of that phasing plan to revitalize a downtown, focusing on more of the smaller businesses and kind of making it more walkable and pleasing for people to be in.
Council, any questions on this particular item? Mr. Hart?
Yeah, by completing it just brings it all together, and it's part of that whole downtown street improvement that we've been working on now for 15 years, 10 years, 15?
The first award that you got was in 2013.
Okay, so
So it's been about 10 years.
About 10 years, okay. So that's been an ongoing project for that long. Now this is the final phase.
We have one more, which is item 9 on the list,
Okay.
Decatur Avenue.
Okay,
And we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Sure.
And just because we're identifying this as another phase, it doesn't mean that council can't continue, you know, that look in other areas of the community. You know, if we're liking that street tree, curb extension, ADA ramp look,
Mhm.
we can keep going with it. It's just that that's what was identified back in 2011, 2012 by a steering committee and business leaders that, hey, you know, we have to put some kind of limit on this, and this is what was decided at that time. But
I have a question on this one. So pretty much right now it's an extension of what we did on Sixth Street to go all the way to Lincoln Avenue. But the fact that it's on the program here, the 6-year program, doesn't necessarily mean that that's the type of design we want to continue with. Like you said, we could discuss later on any changes and make those changes then.
yep, would agree. You know, the downtown, that was really intended to be your showpiece, you know, Sixth and Edison, you know, you have the big fancy brick pavers, you have trees, you have lighting, you know, all of those elements that went in are actually really pretty expensive. And so in front of City Hall, we were continuing that look with the curb extensions, those what are called also bulb outs. And so the brick pavers, we did concrete. And so, you know, there's opportunities like that where we can reduce the costs as we go, and keep that, you know, brick paver look isolated to a certain part of the city. So absolutely, there's, all of these are open for discussion. This just allows us to actually apply for money to try to get them.
Gotcha. Okay. Any more questions, council, on this item? All right, we'll move to the next one.
So this project, project 6, so we're on the other side of the city, as we're going out to the airport. We have, as Public Works in Yakima County, we've been monitoring this bridge for a few years now. It seems that, every year there's at least, one semi truck that hits the bridge. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The bridge itself is a municipality bridge. It is owned by the city. But it is fairly narrow, and when we have folks coming off of Highway 241, and trying to make that turn, they're going too fast, they're trying to beat somebody, you know, any reason imaginable. But, you know, we personally have inspected that bridge quite a few times with semis that seem to like wipe out that guardrail. So as of right now, the bridge, and it is inspected each year by Yakima County as a contract between the city and the county. The bridge disrepair is not to a point that warrants full replacement, but it is on the list as one that needs to be rehabbed. So we've been working with WashDOT. WashDOT has planned to do a roundabout there. They're going to do a couple of roundabouts on Highway 241. So what we want to see is this project partnered with some of WashDOT's work to kind of happen at the same time. So when WashDOT, they're in planning phase right now, but when they get ready to move forward to do a roundabout there, we actually want to take this bridge out and do something called a box culvert, where it isn't a bridge anymore, but it still allows water to go through. And then at that time, widen this to be able to tie into the approaches of that roundabout that DOT is going to do. So this is going to be a joint project. It's probably going to be on the list for a little while. This project could get escalated if we have more semis that kind of wipe it out, and where we have to do something with it, then we will. But at the moment, we're kind of waiting for the state to get funding to work on this as a more holistic approach.
Any questions? Kelly?
Yeah, one of the questions I had when we talked about if we could keep thank you. One of the other things too, there was all the information about, you know, more traffic in that particular area, because there's that housing projects that's on the, I guess it'd be the south side of Edison. That's pretty close.
The mobile home park?
The mobile home park. And then, of course, there's the Can-Am, which is up there. They use that for traffic too.
They
Yeah.
use the one up north a little bit on Scheller Road. They're on Scheller Road.
They go to Scheller Road.
Yeah.
Okay, which makes more sense, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah. But that particular bridge, there's some similarities also with the Scheller Road bridge crossing there, because there's been fatalities at both of those on occasion. So, but I think the idea of boxing it, if that's a project you're working with, DOT, is that right?
Yeah, so the boxing, it's a box culvert. So right now the bridge, so a lot of these bridges in our valley were put in kind of the 40s and 50s. There was
Right.
major expansion of doing bridges at that time.
Yeah.
They're all generally the same. And so this bridge actually is a girder bridge. And meaning it has pre-stressed concrete girders underneath it. And there's nothing wrong with them. And back in the day, they've certainly put a lot of concrete in them, so they're not overly failing structurally, but they do require maintenance. And so DOT has a different mechanism of a bridge called a box culvert, and it's basically like a concrete box that goes over Sulphur Raceway. And so that's what we're looking to do here. Instead of an actual bridge, a girder bridge, just do a box culvert. And that will be a kind of a less expensive approach that allows us to widen that whole bridge network up. Because that's really the issue, is that folks are coming on 241, whether they're speeding or not, I can't say, but they're having difficulty making that turn onto kind of that narrowed part of Edison Avenue, Edison Road there. And so consequently, when they miss that turn, they're hitting the guardrail, and that outer, there's a little concrete abutment on that bridge, and they're generally taking that out with them.
I actually like that culvert box. It was, I wrote it down on here, to be able to reduce the cost and a little bit easier to make it wider. I believe Scheller Road has that same culvert box right now, and it's pretty good for the semis to turn in there. Plus the bridge or the canalway, it's not as close to the highway, 241 as this one is.
So thank you for bringing up Scheller. So Jackie, if you want to hold that down just a little bit to see Scheller. So at Scheller, one thing we have to be mindful of is the actual Scheller Road itself is outside city limits. And so what the city can do at that location with, serious fatal and type accidents is partner with, at that point, it'd be the county and the state to do a bigger treatment there. In this case, the city would take a supporting role with the county taking the lead role.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from council on this item?
No.
I have one more on this one. You mentioned the semi sitting it. Have we gone after the insurance companies on those semis? I mean, I know it's probably not a lot of money that we.
I don't know. In the past, I've never heard of anything. I know years back, whenever some of this did happen, I'm not sure what the legalities were. This is a few years before I was in this position, so I have never heard whether there was or not.
Okay.
On the last one, which was 2 years ago, I think it was Shane. What happened, we had the guardrail that was hanging off the bridge. We actually closed that lane monetarily while we could get out there and get an inspection done on it. And that actually happened at night, and the semi just kept on going. So there wasn't we didn't know who to file for, because there wasn't nobody there. As opposed to a few years ago, Stackhouse Bridge was redone, and a semi went off there, and the semi was actually there, so we were able to turn that into an insurance company. But so far, we haven't actually been able to tag anybody to turn it into that I'm aware of.
All right.
Classic hit and run.
If there's no more further questions on this one. Let's move on to the next.
So this project, like the one we were just talking about, is more in terms of safety, and it's probably better to see on the map. There is coming off of kind of, I guess it'd be Crescent, coming down off the hill. There's a rather steep incline. So I'm going off memory.
Jackie, can you switch it to the map?
And it's over there on the hill. There you go. So just kind of coming down that, most folks know that there's houses that are kind of built up on the hill, and then there's a very steep incline that goes down to the canal. And so what this is for is guardrail improvement on the canal side. We've had This has been a project on here for a while, and it's for a number of reasons. Number one is that there is no money just for guardrail. So we would have to do something a little bit more robust here in making it more like a pedestrian safety type project. But guardrail is actually pretty expensive to do. And we have issues with this particular roadway because the houses are up on the hill and you have an embankment, and you have a road and you have another embankment. And that roadway is actually very narrow as is. And so we've looked at this a couple different ways and we've kind of basically concluded that we need to do, the right of way is also narrow. We need to do some right of way, purchasing a right of way from those homes that are elevated. But then that's also going to trigger a wall on that side to retain that slope to be able to put the guardrail in. So while it sounds simple, there's quite a lot going on at this particular corridor. And we're continuing to get, pursue money on this. This little section of roadway is also not classified. So just because the traffic going through there is generally local traffic, just trying to get to homes. On the public works side, we recently did our signage for a one-way street, and that might be another option is, looking at some potential one-way streets so that we don't have to procure that right away and put in those expensive walls. So
You do a right of way and the people aren't gonna have parking in front of their house.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, there's not much about that project that's
Yeah.
easy.
yeah, but it's been needing to be done since 1970. Me and my friend in her 55 Cadillac, we went around that corner in front of Honey's house. And there was ice and the front of that Cadillac was hanging in front of the canal. And it was like, I was in the passenger seat and I almost sat on her lap and we didn't even want to put it in park. I mean, we were teetering. And some people came along and they sat on the back of it and helped us get out, but the car didn't go over, but they helped us get it out. Every time I go around that corner, I remember that episode. And I slow down.
Councilor Hart?
It seems like,
1970.
well, historically, that's where the canal ran, so that's where the limits are. The other side, you can't get much easement because that belongs to one of the SVID,
Yeah, SVID has their service road.
yeah, along there. So there's no way to get easement out of that. Yeah, that's a tricky one.
That is a
That's
tricky
very
one.
tricky
I
one.
actually like the idea of making it a one-way going southbound, so you don't really give them that option to speed up in that curve. And is instead of using the rails, is there a way to use those cylinder blocks on the curves?
Oh.
Ecology blocks?
The ecology blocks?
We can look at ecology blocks. The problem with them is that they're still going to be movable. So with guardrail, you put guardrail in, it's implanted 6 to 8 feet down in concrete. But we could consider maybe more of like a Jersey barrier that's somehow tied down. The ecology blocks, we just don't have any way of actually, burying them unless you want to bury a couple of ecology blocks and try to find a way to stick them together.
And don't they tend to be more temporary as well, just because of that?
Generally speaking, they are, there's some folks that will do like retaining wall and whatnot out of ecology blocks. I mean, it's not something that we'd recommend, but they're more of a temporary block or, a reason to show that there's a hazard in a particular area. But Jersey barriers and, there's a couple different forms of Jersey barrier that we could consider.
Any more questions, Councilor? All right, we'll move to the next one.
So this one, hopefully council remembers, this is the roundabout. This is at Yakima Valley Highway and First. No, we had talked quite a bit about this when we were submitting that application for YVCOG's consideration. And so this is a project on your list for soliciting funding, but then also to be able to program this project at the YVCOG and state level. I'm happy to go into more details on this if you guys want to hear them, but
Any questions from council? I have just a quick one. And the reason it's still on this is because it still hasn't started, right?
Yep,
So I want
still
to
ha-
keep it on there for any future.
Correct. We did receive notification that the city, this was actually the number one priority in, this gets in the weeds pretty fast, but the applications have been scored and, COG has to divide money up by city type and whether cities are urban or rural. Raul and Andrew, actually sat with us for close to 2 hours with YB-COG, trying to understand all the intricacies about how the money was divided. And I'm happy to share that information, but just know it's probably gonna be a 2-hour meeting with you guys. And so I guess the Cliff Notes version is this project did rank number 1. There were 3 projects in this category. You guys got number 1, Grandview was number 2, Toppin was number 3. For the current allocation of money, because it had to get divided up, which nobody knew about at the time, that was a requirement that came through by WashDOT when the award notices were going out. So the project right now is partially funded. Is partially funded at 100%. The city is going to receive around $1.2 million for that. So we are, when you look at the list of that spreadsheet that you have, you see a few more lines than what you're seeing in the other projects. And that is because a portion of it is secured and a portion of it is planned.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. Council, any further questions on this particular item? All right,
Sorry, I have a question, Deputy
go
Mayor.
ahead.
What year do we project we begin this project? I remember we were talking about it during a council meeting.
So the funding, and this is going to be part of that 2-hour meeting with you guys. So the COGS funding source was for 26 and 27. It has to be spent by 27. However, DOT allows you to obligate 1 year ahead of time. So we can actually start design in October of 2024 because October is really 2025 in the federal world. So that's how some of this gets really confusing pretty fast. But so that's why you see on here some of those funding years. And we want to complete, we can start design. We have a little bit of right of way to do, which is good because we want to get that out of the way before we go into construction. So construction could start as early as around it'd be October of 2025, which would be fiscal year 2026.
Gotcha. All right, we'll move on to the next
And
one.
that's just, excuse me, and that's just the money part,
Mhm.
and the design part
Yep, correct.
to get to 27.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we would hope that this project would be constructed in the actual calendar year 2026. What all that we're looking for right now is to make the construction funding package whole.
Excellent. Thank you. Sorry about the interruption.
You're good. We'll move on to the next one.
So next one on the list, this is Decatur Avenue. So that was in conjunction with project number 5, part of your downtown core. This one is to go from kind of 5th to Edison. And it's really that next, after project 5 is done, this is really your next final to complete that downtown plan that was identified back in 2011, 2012. It doesn't mean that this project can absolutely go before the other project. It's more of a matter of priority. And in fact, you probably, with this project going in, you'd have more local businesses served with doing the stretch from 5th to Edison than going south. But this is another one that we need to wait for the right kind of money. This will be federally funded. This is a fairly, multi-million-dollar project. So it's one that we would need to plan. It happen, design and construction over a few years.
Any questions on this one, Council?
Yeah, I have a question.
ahead,
So
Counselor.
here I do see it says improvements, even it says sidewalk.
Mhm.
So would that be improvements for a sidewalk all along Decatur?
Yep, on both sides. So Decatur Avenue, there were in the kind of downtown area back in the day, there was plans to do street trees everywhere. I mean, and most folks, those trees now are kind of like dead twigs sticking out of the sidewalk if they haven't already been taken out. So Decatur was one of those places. And so it's caused some heaving on that Decatur. And because we're going to get in there and reconstruct it anyway, why not make it nice? So yeah, that would be the plan.
And
Go ahead, Councilor.
excuse me, but the other thing that I was just That's the part where it's kind of in front of where the licensing and then there's dance school on the other side. On that street. Okay, so right now, the parking is all angle. And then there's those 20-foot long pickups that take up the entire street, both sides. I mean, they truly do.
They do.
They do.
And so,
Yes, I do.
and you're proud of it. I know that you're proud of that big pickup. But it seems like that would also go along with the idea of having angle parking and parallel to match on Sixth.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, good. You can park over there.
And then we'd also want to do those curb extensions too, to try
Yeah.
to reduce the walking distance across that roadway for pedestrians.
Right.
But then also to protect that parking, so kind of pushing people closer to that center lane, so if you're trying to back up, you're a little bit more protected.
Yeah,
I guess the only downfall of having the parallel parking spaces is that it does reduce some more parking.
It
And
does.
We're very reduced with parking in downtown right now.
It does, and it's about a 2-to-1 ratio, so parallel parking spaces, when they get designed, they're 20 feet in width. Whereas your diagonal is about 10 feet in width, so yeah, for
That's
every
good.
parallel, you're kind of losing about 2. The benefit to the parallel is that you don't have to have then all that pavement, because your parallels are about 10 feet wide, whereas your diagonals are about 20. So there's a trade-off in both
Smaller
ways.
sidewalks?
Yeah, so your minimum sidewalk width is 5 feet. With Fed money, it's 6. And so that is certainly something we can evaluate. Where at least what was challenging on Sixth Street with those projects is everybody who had a storefront, because we still have to make sure that they have ADA coming in and out of their business. And so that might warrant a little bit of a wider sidewalk, but that's certainly something, to look at, through design efforts.
Mhm.
At some point, and I don't know if you're there yet or not, but parking, I agree, parking in downtown is gonna become a commodity. I mean, most businesses don't have parking lots behind their buildings as alleyways, so at some point, we can consider doing a parking study and kind of looking at how many spaces would be warranted per, kind of store, and trying to look at options for more of a community parking lot and what that could look like.
Okay.
Gotcha. And just to remind council, this is later on, we could talk individual details, I guess, on each project. All right. So if no further questions, we'll move on to the next.
Okay, this one, Lincoln Avenue and Yakima Valley Highway. This has been an interesting project from an engineering perspective for us. So this one was identified through, it's been on your tip now, I think this is the 3rd year. But it was identified through a city safety plan outreach effort, looking at areas in the city where there have been fatal and serious accidents. Of course, this is one of your busiest intersections in the city, so we're gonna have something there. This particular project is right outside Walmart. We know that the property to the north, there's plans for a major development to happen there. And of course, there's plans over near Alphabet Lane for several hundred apartment complex unit going in there. So we expect this intersection is just going to get busier. And it is a skewed intersection, which poses a little bit of difficulty for getting a permanent feature in, and that coupled by the railroad. So we've done some outreach with the railroad so far about doing a roundabout here. And what's challenging on the engineering perspective is being able to kind of shut down, I guess, Lincoln Avenue for those trains to go by, but continue to allow that roundabout to function where people can go through the roundabout and not back up inside the roundabout. So it's been a little challenging with the railroad. There's been a couple of these that have been done in the Tri-Cities that they've really taken the lead in fighting the railroad, for lack of a better word. And so we're gonna likely piggyback off some of the work that they've done. A signal here can continue to function. We do have an odd shape for a signal, and right now we have those little slip lanes, and it's actually those slip lanes that kind of bypass that signal. Folks seem to try to speed up around those and beat that other car, and that's why we're getting some of these traffic accidents. So that is that movement that we're trying to correct and fix with this project. The roundabout would do that. A signal could, but we'd be looking at a completely new intersection layout to try to get rid of those slip lanes, which part of what we have to be concerned about is level of service at intersections and making sure that they function appropriately for the amount of traffic that they have.
Okay. Council, do we have any questions on this item? Go ahead,
This
Council.
one, you talked about traffic, have we done a tracking of how many vehicles go through that intersection? I'm sure you must make it, at least get number 10 on the list here, but could you share some of those numbers?
I can share them I can share them after the meeting. I don't have them handy off the top of my head.
Okay. If you would, just curiosity on that one. I know it's a lot, but
Yep, and then, so council knows at that particular intersection, so we do have several incoming developments. We do make them do a traffic impact analysis, for each development coming in. So there is a city, requirement that any, development creating 10 or more trips is required to analyze that intersection and look at level of services. So we're able to pull all that information, and because it's been a pretty high developed corridor in the last couple of years. I mean, thankfully, it just continues to get developed for us.
And you're talking about the housing development that's potentially gonna go behind Walmart?
Yeah, so that particular development had to do a very robust TIA. But not only looking at this intersection, but they had to look at and prepare a TIA all the way down for exit 69. And that's, they received a traffic impact fee because of that. And so, yeah, they've had to look at this intersection, and also over at 16th and Lincoln. And so all of the major ways in that area. There's a potential, nothing has been submitted to the city. There's a potential for the property north, was the old sugar beet factory to also develop.
So going back to the housing development, I know they got a fee on the roundabout on exit 69.
Mhm.
Would they get another fee for this intersection? It's just the one, right?
Yep, just the one. So what we look at when development is coming in, that's going to generate that level of traffic. We want them to work through a traffic consultant, not the city. I mean, we want them to pay for it. But what we're looking for is the level of service. So the city's level of service that they've adopted for an intersection is a C. So if there is a development coming in that forces that level of service to be below the city standard, then that kind of opens us up to look at mitigation measures. So far, at this intersection, we haven't dropped below a C. But they did cause exit 69, that infrastructure to drop below the state's level, which is a D.
Gotcha. Any further questions on this item, council? We'll move to the next one.
Okay, I think we've talked about this one, at least it was last year, probably not with new council. So Midvale and Alexander Road, this is one we've also been keeping an eye on for a number of years, doing traffic studies and traffic counts on it. So as development continues to happen on the south side of 82, and one of the most recent developments, Pacific Ag, had to do a traffic impact analysis, specifically looking at this intersection to see what the level of service is. And they did not cause this intersection to drop below the level of service that's adopted by the city. But at some point, this one will drop below that level of service. And that's why this one is on the list. It'll kind of continue to be pushed out until we have that traffic generator where where a permanent measure is needed here. Right now, Alexander is red and Midvale is a flashing yellow. So what's been identified for this location is a full traffic signal with a turn pocket off of Alexander to add additional queuing on Alexander, so trucks can like if you got one trying to take a left and one take a right, the rights can go where the lefts are going to have to wait for the signal. So this particular project, we can consider like TIB funding for this at any time. But also, as development happens here, this is also a great opportunity for a public-private partnership through like seed and curb, where we can tie this to a planning decision or a SEPA decision, and have kind of the developer help pay for this level of project with the city applying for grant money for them.
Any questions from council?
How much of this would come out of city budget? Do
Uh,
we foresee?
Yeah, so at this point, just because of what we're trying to do here with this regulatory document, we have TIB as a potential funding source. So TIB is 15% local cash match, and so that's what you see here on this particular project. But if we have that economic developer coming in, the city's contribution is going to be zero. So if we're looking at like the seed or curb type funding programs, there's a 20% cash match, which we would have the developer pay for. And then of the remaining half is grant, half is loan. And we typically see the developer taking on the loan part. So the benefit to them is that we're able to apply on their behalf for some of these grant monies that they wouldn't otherwise be eligible for. And then the city gets an improvement out of it. So, but it becomes a timing issue. You know, I wish I had a crystal ball, but I don't. I don't know if there'll be, and it's tied to job creation. So tomorrow, you know, there might be a big development coming in with 100 jobs, but it might be 10 years. So it kind of depends on when this actual intersection falls below appropriate level of service to know when we have to do that improvement. Does that make sense?
Is there a projection on when it might fall below?
Right now it's operating at A's and B's. So it would take, I can look at the last TIA, but from my recollection, it would take a couple hundred cars additional to travel through this intersection before it falls. So we're not quite there yet.
So pretty much if say next year, like you said, you know, there's a distribution center that would want to come into the industrial park out there, that might cause it to go.
Exactly.
And, you know, they could potentially pay that fee.
Mhm.
Okay,
The developer
the
would.
developer, just a percentage.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yeah, so we would, depending on how they're coming in and what size of, I
Mhm.
mean, if it's gonna be a Walmart distribution center like what you have on the other side of town, you know, that's having hundreds and hundreds of trips a day, they're likely gonna be paying for the whole thing. But if it's just a smaller, like say they're creating 10 or 20 jobs and they cause it to fail, it would more be in closer to a percentage. If it is a larger development and we can apply for seed and curb money. So if it's seed and curb money, we would have them do the 20% match requirement. And then it's split between a grant and loan for the remaining amount where they would generally take on the loan.
Mhm. Okay.
So just, it kind of depends on how this develops. We don't
We
know
don't,
yet.
we don't know what's gonna happen, right? I mean, we don't know who's gonna come in and, you know, take over traffic and have a lot of traffic go through that intersection.
Pacific Ag definitely will.
They didn't.
They did a TIA.
Yeah.
So they did a traffic impact analysis for the development. And yes, they're adding jobs and they're adding freight. So in reviewing that TIA, we reviewed it, and the state WashDOT also reviewed it, and they were not a large contributing factor at that intersection causing it to fail.
Yet.
Well, ever, because their plant isn't going to be expandable.
Okay.
So they have,
okay.
they have a set number of jobs that they need to operate that plant. And then they've already identified what their full scale operation is for freight. And so most of their trucks are going to be actually going on the other side of town.
Any further questions on this one? We'll move on to the next one.
Okay, this project, this is a happy project for us. You'll see that the status is S, so meaning you guys do have an award for this and it's secured. So we're looking to start design on this year, and construct it next year. This project was funded by the city had done that city safety plan a couple years ago, and we submitted then for the city safety program through WashDOT, and the city did receive money. This is for spot improvements. There's 2 locations, and it's all in terms of pedestrian safety. So there's no capacity associated with this, but it is like sidewalk and curb extensions. In both of these cases, there was a pedestrian hit And so what we're looking for then is more of that flashing sign and ADA ramps in both of these. There's really nothing for council to do on this. It's on the tip because we have to get it published into COGS plan so it can be on the STIP to be able to get the funds in the city's account.
So, council, any questions before I ask mine?
No.
No. So you said that council, we don't have to do anything on this. You're saying that the design is already in place and approved by council or?
No, so this was a funding application and the money is coming from the state. So the state actually approves the design. And so we actually met with them last year and they came out, they reviewed the project and they generally told us what they wanted to see here to mitigate pedestrian and those incidences. So there is on Sunnyside Mapton, there's a crossing to get pedestrians from one side of the street to the other, which is a ADA ramp. And then they also, DOT wanted a rapid flashing beacon, basically like a safe way for pedestrians to get from one side to the other. At the other intersection, they reviewed the nature of the pedestrian that was hit there, and that location is a bulb out with some ADA ramps.
So, go ahead, Councilor.
As is currently, there's not much in the way of sidewalk on either of those intersections. It's pretty much take your life in your own hands if you want to cross.
Correct.
So, Saul Road and South Street. I'm just trying to picture it. I saw the map up there and then down to Ida Bell to around that corner to Mapton Highway.
Yep. So yeah, these are just this particular funding source is city safety money to the state. So they only pay for spot improvements. And that's why there's two locations here for intersection. I mean, we would love to do more sidewalk and more improvement, but just the nature of the funding, it requires you to it's kind of cause and effect. You know, if you have an incident with a serious or fatal pedestrian, that's the only thing that qualifies for this program. Then you have to do the improvement that directly targets why that incident happened.
Right. I used to live up on that Ida Bell stretch.
Okay.
And yeah, that was fun.
My thing is on that South Street and the Sunnyside Mapton Road, I see more of a traffic flow issue. There's a lot of traffic that backs up there. The incident or accident, were they trying to cross the Mapton side?
They were
Okay.
trying to cross and there is no crossings at all along that stretch. And likewise, when you look at that location, the other side of the road is actually county. So originally the state didn't want to pay for anything outside jurisdiction, and they agreed to do that in this case. So the issue really is, I mean, I can't control where pedestrians cross, but at least we can give them a means to cross. And so this particular pedestrian was trying to cross the road and he was hit by a car.
Okay. Gotcha. Any further questions on this item? We'll move on to the next one.
Okay, the last one on here is, and I think council has seen this before. This is improvements to the 6th and Lincoln intersection. So we're currently working on the TIB award Complete Streets to redo those ADA ramps there, which will greatly help. This one is on the list as the ultimate goal at this particular intersection is this is one of the oldest stoplights in the city and it's on a span wire and it's also on a timer. So there's different types of signals throughout the entire city. There's 2 of these left that I'm aware of in the city that's still on a timer. And what the city has been doing is switching to video attenuation. So every signal has like a camera on it. I mean, we're not reading anybody's license plates or anything. That's not the point of it. It detects movement. So if there's a car sitting there and it kind of moves, or if what it does is a program that takes a bunch of photos and it is looking at differences. And this is what we like to do at this intersection is then do that video detection. for, making sure that cars can continue to move through there and no one's just sitting there. The other issue with the signal is that it is not upgradable currently for pedestrians. So, there's pedestrian heads there, but they don't have a protected phase for pedestrians. And in order to get there, we have to upgrade that controller. So there's a little bit more work to do here. The ADA ramps are greatly going to help pedestrian safety, but it's not the permanent fix for that entire intersection. So that's why this one is on the list.
Council, any questions on this? Council Bieler?
The one thing I love about that intersection is the countdown. Is that going to go away then?
No,
Okay.
no, we'll keep that there.
I love that too.
Countdown.
You never have time to go through.
And just for council's information, when we were doing the self-evaluation plan of the entire cities, every signal within the city fails for ADA compliance. So that's something that we'll be continuing to look at for every single signal, this one included. I mean, this one, its priority, I think, is a little elevated because of all the school traffic and all the traffic in general, but that's certainly something that we'll be incorporating into every project.
Council, any further questions on this item?
I was just going to agree with the length of time to cross an intersection at wherever there's a light. I've made the mistake of trying to do that. You just hope that the people are going to slow down and let you go, let you finish your walk, because there's no, yeah, it's tough.
That is tough.
Scooter or wheelchair.
Just to recount the timeline on this, we're going to, I think what I have on my notes, the hearing would be advertised July 10th.
The hearing is going to be advertised on July 10th, so it'll be in the paper.
Okay,
It means all these documents will be available for public comment.
okay.
And then the actual hearing is going to be on the 22nd.
During our council
During
meeting.
your council meeting, and then directly after your hearing, council, there'll be an action, motion for council to, accept the 6-year tip and submit it to COG.
Okay, okay.
Any further questions, Council?
I do have a further, maybe this is more of a collective. We have been discussing in other special meetings about well, really the need, not even the potential, but the need of having public forums. We haven't been having them. I think the public really needs to be educated on everything that's going on with the breakdown. There's a huge disconnect still from us and our projects and community, even just how City Hall operates. So where I was getting to is I don't know if HOA has been involved in public forums before with City Council, and if that would be something that y'all would be willing to do once we get those scheduled. And of course, it could be after even approving these, since we have our public hearings in place. But I do think it's really important and wanted to.
Really keep.
Yeah.
going.
Definitely something to consider.
Mhm.
I mean, the public's always welcome to come to the hearings here. So I think if we
really what-
are, yeah, that's really, yeah, 'cause, we have the TVs now and they could see everything that's going on. So it'd be a great opportunity for, each counselor to get people involved, get the community involved, and make sure that they're here and they know what's going on with the city and the projects.
Mhm.
Just
Go ahead.
along that same line now, it seems like, do we just have the one public hearing, council meeting?
Correct. Yep, just one that I'm aware of, at least on public works
Okay.
side.
Mhm.
So then if we wanted to if for any reason at all, decide we wanted to have a form that was different, we're gonna publish it in the newspaper, you said, and then it'll come back to city council for a hearing. Cause that's the regular.
Yep, that's the process we have to follow for the regulation part side of things. So it'll be advertised on the 10th. This information, I mean, of course, it's available now, but this information will be available for public comment. What we want to see if there's any comment that happens during the public hearing, it'll be noted. But then we are still going to ask council to adopt so that we can meet the deadline and get this issued. But I mean, I'm planning on to be here during the public hearing to do this level of discussion again, maybe not as detailed, because we've really wanted to get the information in council's hands. So I think this is one of the first times you've heard this.
Mhm.
But historically, we've done the hearing and adoption in the same meeting. And we're really going to emphasize that this plan can be updated and amended, you know, so if during the public hearing, if you receive comment, that, hey, I really just want this project to get added from somebody, it doesn't mean that it can't get added, it just won't be added right then, but we can amend the tip after the fact.
Correct.
What we wanted to try to mitigate is any discussion from council during the public hearing to say, I mean, I'm just opposed to this project, or I don't
Mhm.
understand, you know, because we really want to emphasize more community engagement and trying to get citizens involved.
Mhm. Okay.
So it's less us, more them.
Well, that would be the hope, but you know, you never know.
Yeah, that's what you hope for always.
So I have something, I mean, I know we're not gonna add it right to this year's, but maybe to next year's. I would like to see a little bit more, I guess, more headway, not necessarily do it the month of it being due, maybe, you know, a month prior to that. There's a few projects that I've heard in the past, one of them being the highway, the Sunnyside highway over there on Maple Grove, that intersection. I know the previous council discussed a roundabout there. The traffic gets pretty wild out there, and I believe there's been a few accidents
Mhm.
as well on that intersection. Another section where I didn't see this year, but maybe for the future, is on Outlook Road, starting off there on Schoon Road towards those trailer park. And I believe there's more development that's gonna happen towards that way. So maybe, I don't know, maybe that's something in the future that we could discuss. I see a lot more foot traffic on Outlook Road coming up to Schoon Road than what I see on Schoon Road. So it's definitely a dangerous area there in that section. But like I said, I'm not gonna add it to this year's, but hopefully we could discuss it in the future.
Can I add a little bit to the outlook? There are some developments that are planned to go in there. And I will say on the public works side, as folks submit for permits, it is a city requirement that they do frontage improvements.
Yeah.
So as I know of one that's going to go in on Outlook, and they're required to do curb gutter, sidewalk, and lighting along that stretch. So that's the other thing to be mindful of, is as developments come in, know that we're already going to require them to do that. But that particular roadway is also getting pretty rough in shape with cracks and potholes and things. So
Yeah.
that will be one that we'll definitely want to get on the list for preservation. So I appreciate that comment. Thank you.
Council, any further questions, comments?
No, just, I agree with Deputy Mayor. I think maybe in the future, if we can get a little bit more time in advance, even just to go back and maybe do a little review even ourselves, would be a little bit more helpful. But just for future reference.
One thing that's gonna help is, this is my fourth time doing this, so
Yeah,
I've pretty much seen I didn't have a whole lot of questions,
Mhm.
but next year when we do this, you'll already know most of what's on there, so.
Yeah.
the repetitiveness of it does make it easier to remember, and if you're familiar with the streets, where they're at and how they look, that's really does help as well. And if you've driven those streets, well, just like Mr. Councilor Ripley trying to drive into the canal, or the driver did, she was the passenger. I want to make that sure, because you wouldn't want your driving to
You
get
don't
into
want the wrong
trouble.
story out there.
I don't want to get the wrong story. Ripley wasn't driving, that other person was. But there's been a lot of cars in the canal. And so that's a really major project. And we know that because we've seen that, we've drive by, the police come in and get accusations for having rescued people from the cars in the canal. So, we know there's those dangers, the ones at the bridge out there on Edison. Oh yeah, that's coming out of a curve, speeding up and then wanting to turn. Oh yeah, that's fun. But there's a lot of them. And I really appreciate the map too, that we can focus, we can see also our city limits, those the dotted lines, correct?
Correct. Yep. Those are your city limit lines. There are, you have a little bit of ways to go before you get to your UGA.
Mhm.
For state and Fed money, though, know that all the improvements have to be within your city limits, or you can partner, like say what we're doing with exit 69, kind of partnering with WashDOT to do something outside of your jurisdiction. But generally, you're going to be surrounded by the county. And also for councils, just for your knowledge, so every year we request all the accident data throughout the city. So it's the last 6 years of data, and that's what's generally used to look at the hotspots in the city that we want to target. Through COG, we also do a traffic counter program where traffic counters should be going out in the next about 2 months. And so I think there's 20 locations throughout the city that we monitor volumes of traffic. And then we also couple that with all of the traffic impact analysis that come in to kind of look at more of where the issues are with the city. So I mean, I think all the projects you guys talked about were great, and we can certainly get them added. And for outreach, I think council has maybe an early retreat or spring retreat each year. That might be an option for getting this information out to you a little bit earlier.
Thank you. What I would like to see is on the hearing, maybe some street views for the public, and I don't know, on the presentation, not necessarily just the top view, but maybe a couple of screen views for, just for learning, I guess, for purpose of the public in here, and so they can see what we're talking about.
Visual.
Yeah,
really
visualization. And also would like to remind the public that to come to the hearing, right? And I hear it all the time, I see it all the time, that there's roads that are crumbling and tires being blown and rims, but if you don't bring it to our attention, we are not gonna know. So I really
I do
want.
have a list of those today.
I think maybe for a future meeting or the hearing, we can definitely get those. And yeah, I'd like to see that list, because I drive around in town and I haven't had any issues.
It was just, holes in the road.
Yeah.
I think that's important to reassess. How could we, where would we start? Because I know that is something that people have,
Potholes?
yeah, for
I would
potholes.
send that list to Public Works Director Sanchez. Potholes, I mean, we can take care of that at the city level. Though if it's like a failed patch or Sunnyside's been notorious for sinkholes, which become a much bigger problem. Something like that might get more elevated into design, but just for maintenance and whatnot, the roads, starting with Public Works would be your best bet.
Yeah, typically you just call it in or email it or something, and then we just send it down to the street supervisor, who then will go out and evaluate it, and then they'll just get it onto their schedule of when next time they asphalt.
Okay.
One of the things to remember too, though, is typically after November, and this is frustrating because it's in the middle of the winter, but there is no asphalts that are open through the winter. So what if, depending on how bad the pothole is, we'll try to cold patch it, which is just something that is temporary, just to keep the pothole. But that's sometimes the public doesn't really realize until the plants open up again in mid-March or so.
Okay. And Councilor Ripley, maybe during a regular meeting, during your report, I'd like to hear about those spots in town. So council, any further questions before I adjourn? There being no further go ahead.
Wait. I wanted to know what our ordinance is on people camping in the park.
Is that something that's on our agenda, or
We
items
can't
from
discuss
council?
anything.
Huh?
We
It has
can't
to be on
discuss
our
it.
agenda.
Yeah,
Okay,
definitely a good question.
I didn't realize that was on our agenda for discussion today, but I did notice some in the park this morning.
Well, there being no further business to come before council, and without objection, I adjourn this meeting at 12:30 p.m. Thank you, everyone.